One of the subjects I want to touch on before concluding the video is the subject of law enforcement and people who are mentally challenged, whether they be autistic, mentally retarded, medically declared as stupid, or whatever. Uh, Particularly if they have episodes of violence. And I had the honor of working with some medical staff in the psychiatric field, and it was when I was with the sheriff's department. I actually worked the psych ward for about a year and a half, and I learned quite a bit. And most of what I learned actually came from working with the staff. Uh, the county gave us very limited knowledge of how to deal with mentally challenged people. And that's the same across the board. They just really don't spend a lot of time teaching law enforcement officers how to deal with situations with the mentally challenged. And if you, for example, have an autistic person, severely autistic person in your family, or if you have a close friend who's either mentally autistic or has a child that is, especially severely autistic, you can look and tell how the public reacts to that, to tell and to let you know just how alien most people are to that. They really are kind of freaked out by it, especially if they start to get a little upset or whatever. A lot of people just find it to be very strange. And because a lot of law enforcement officers don't really get a lot of training, some get none, they're the same way. It's just alien to them. But anyway, I would really think twice about calling law enforcement if they start to act violent. Now, I'm not saying don't call them at all. If you have to call them, then you have to do what you have to do. But what I'm saying is if you can, try to come up with a plan to deal with them without calling law enforcement. I have a friend in Georgia who has a son who's mentally retarded, and he has, from time to time, violent episodes. And apparently, she saw a story on the news where a lady had a son who was mentally challenged. I forget exactly in what way the kid was mentally challenged, but he was a young teenager, if I remember correctly. I think the boy was about 15 or 16 years old. And the lady called the police. And when they arrived, she came out and she was speaking to the police in the driveway. And the boy came to the doorway of the home, and he had a butter knife in his hand. And he stopped right there in the doorway. It looked almost like when he saw the police, like it kind of stunned him. And the next thing you know, both officers cleared their holsters and they killed him right there on the spot. They shot him several times. And like I said, he stopped in the doorway. He did not charge them or anything, and they did not hesitate, and they shot him. And that story scared her. And her, myself, and a couple of friends, we all sat down with her and we all came up with a plan because we all lived kind of close to her. And basically, the gist of the plan was to call all of us first before you call the police. And the rest of us, we were all males. And that was important because, she needed somebody to come by and really take control of the situation. One thing about kids who are mentally challenged, they still know who to mess with and who not to mess with. They know who they can dominate and who they can't dominate. So, a lot of people think they don't have any sense at all, but actually they do. And we were pretty successful with that. So if you can, try to come up with something similar to that before calling the police. It's a lot better than that. But more importantly, if they're about 8 or 9 or 10 years old and you see that as they get older, their violent episodes seem to be increasing, you may want to start putting them on the list for a home now. Now, I understand you may want to keep them in your home for the rest of their lives. I really do. I understand that. You know, that's your child, you love them, or it's your niece, your nephew, or whatever. It's family. I understand. But for their sake, you have to be realistic about whether or not you're going to be able to deal with that, because every time they act up in public, now people, they're not going to hesitate to call the police, the public is, especially if they're acting really violent, they're really acting up. People will call the police, and you don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, calling the police is like rolling dice. And like I said, not all cops are bad, just too many of them are. So you don't want to take that chance if you don't have to. And it's for their safety, because every time you go out in public and they act up, they're actually in danger. Not just everyone else around them, but they're actually in danger. And that process can be so tedious trying to get them in a home. Believe me, you want to be ahead of the game, and you want to make it clear that you're doing it because they're having violent episodes, and you want to communicate with whatever professionals you're dealing with by email a lot. Because one of the things that tends to break up bureaucracy is a paper trail. People really fear a paper trail. People who know that they're going to bullshit you, they really prefer to talk by phone so that later they can deny saying anything. So they're going to try to talk to you by phone. If you're dealing with someone who's trying to, they're trying to con you, or they're trying to, feed you a lot of bullshit or whatever, they're trying to delay you or whatever, or they're trying to route you in another direction to come up with different ideas or whatever, you may have to keep pushing. But believe me, it's well worth it. And when they go into those homes, you still have the right to see them. If you don't want to see them, that's going to be on you, but you have the right to see them. You have the right to come and pick them up. You have the right to come and take them home for the holiday. So it's not like when they go into the home, like you're never going to see them again. In fact, I encourage you to do so, because when people go to the homes to visit their loved ones, the staff there know that they better run a tight ship. All right, guys, thank you for taking the time to view the video. If you liked it, please click like, and do not hesitate to smack that subscribe button.